I started this cafe with 0 restaurant experience on 3 weeks' notice and sold it 3 years later on Craigslist. Let's go look around. I had lived in this neighborhood for 10 years and taken dance classes at ODC, who owns this building. So in 2016, when I was running a conference for 175 attendees, I thought to run it in the theater here at ODC. When I found out that the old cafe was closing, I sent an email to the then executive director of our landlord. My email had been forwarded to Matt Semmelhack, and he said, "I understand you would like to buy the assets and start up your own cafe. Here's what you need to know." He was selling all of the assets, and he met me at the cafe with a list of the assets that I would need to buy in order to run my own restaurant. Espresso machine, $20,000. Ice machine, $4,000. Tables and chairs, $3,000. And he walked me through all of the assets and essentially said, "Take what you want, and I'll get rid of the rest." Up until that point, I had no intention of starting a restaurant, not to mention starting it on 3 weeks' notice in advance of my conference. But this was an opportunity. I knew that by serving this diverse network of people, I could build something that could in fact be a successful business. For the rest of my life, I will never forget the moment that I decided, for sure, to give it a go and open up Robin's Cafe. I was standing in the middle of the street on the phone with my best friend, and she asked me, "Is there any reason to not open the cafe except that you're afraid of failure?" And I decided in that moment to try and open my very first restaurant. I remember walking these streets nights and days trying to figure out what is actually necessary to run a brick and mortar restaurant in San Francisco. That first 3 weeks of starting up the restaurant was absolutely crazy. I had to figure out everything necessary to run a brick and mortar restaurant, and I had no time to do it in. Having employees who I was responsible for, handling cash flow with vendors, all of the things necessary to start up and maintain a successful business were new to me, and I had to learn them on the fly. I was sitting in the cafe in the middle of the night by myself so often, and one of the things that I was considering is opening up a second location. I had been sent an email from a neighbor offering a second location, a Robin's Cafe 2. I remember vividly looking across the street at my baristas operating Robin's Cafe Original and realizing, actually, I don't want this one either. The heartbreak and angst of running Robin's Cafe is something that everyone who has founded a company can relate to. It's really lonely at the top when you have no one else to turn to. And with the hours that I was keeping to maintain Robin's Cafe in operation, I was tired, I was lonely, and ultimately, it was a little bit heartbreaking. I decided I had 2 options. I was either gonna sell the cafe, or I was gonna shut it for good. Wow, it's been 3 years. And today is the day I sell Robin's Cafe. After I made the decision to sell Robin's Cafe, it really boiled down to how. At first, I talked to a bunch of what are called business brokers, but every single business broker I talked to didn't feel right. They quoted me a lot less than I thought the cafe was worth, and they took 10% no matter who ultimately sold it. I didn't want to give up 10% of my business, and I did want to sell it, so I had to figure out how to sell a restaurant. I Googled restaurants for sale, and advertisements on Craigslist came up. So I sat down and I wrote an advertisement on Craigslist for Robin's Cafe, light-filled, successful, turnkey cafe in the Mission District, established in 2016. A couple of weeks later, a few different people responded, and one of those people eventually purchased Robin's Cafe and continues to run it today. Several different businesses had failed at the corner that became Robin's Cafe. I didn't know if I could make it succeed, but I knew that I would learn a lot from trying. I looked at all of the factors that might contribute to my success and realized that I was willing to work really hard to make it a success. There were so many moments throughout the story of Robin's Cafe that I was terrified, but it was a matter of taking that little step forward every single time and saying, where to from here? What is the next possible step? What's the next iteration? And proceeding from there. On to the next thing.